Hi, all. Welcome to our forecast for the week of Sunday, May 11th through Saturday, May 17th. As always, we're going to start with the astrology, looking at the major transits for this upcoming week, and then we'll get into our 3-card tarot reading to dig a little bit deeper into the themes. I want to let everyone know before I get into it that whenever I talk about full moons, we have a full moon this week, I don't go super deep for full or new moons in these transit forecasts. I focus on those on my Patreon. So if you're interested in going deeper into this full moon in Scorpio, which is exact on Monday, you can find a full reading over on my Patreon. And I'm offering a free 7-day trial, so you can even go listen to it for free. So that is available. Link is down below. Also, a reminder, I'm offering 20% off for Taurus Sun humans. You can get a tarot reading, an astrology reading, an Akashic Records reading with code Taurus 2025. Whoa, what year is it? And that's available through May 19th. So take advantage of that if you would like to book yourself a birthday reading. Okay, let's get into this coming week. So beginning with Monday, May 12th, we experience a full moon at 22 degrees and 12 minutes of Scorpio. And again, full reading on my Patreon, but this full moon is pretty potent. It features a Mercury Pluto square, which is exact later in the day, just like 30 minutes after the full moon is exact. Mercury forms an exact square to Pluto. And we also have Uranus conjunct the sun and opposite the moon. And so this lunar cycle is pretty intense when it comes to outer planet energy. We also have Saturn, which is forming a trine to the moon and a sextile to the sun, and is still hovering around a conjunction with the North Node and getting pretty close to Neptune and Aries. And so there's a lot going on with the outer planets throughout this full moon. And what's especially sticking out to me is that Mercury-Pluto square, because it adds a level of intensity to the picture, to this whole 2-week lunar cycle that's sort of punctuating the moment. And we may be feeling obsessive. That potential is kind of always there with Scorpio lunations, but this all the more because of that Pluto contact with Mercury. A 90-degree angle square forms this challenge between two planetary energies. They're in conflict with one another, but there is some generative tension there. And so where we might be feeling more of the sort of compulsive side of Pluto throughout this full moon, which could look like obsessive thinking, it could look like wanting to control outcomes or control conversations or dialogues. It could look like feeling really threatened and fearful and then going into that control response as a result of that fear, which is super common. But generally, we're playing with power dynamics when Pluto is in the picture. And so you'll probably notice that there are these sort of undercurrents of power, control, and even manipulation in communication especially. So that's something to watch out for in yourself and in other people. And to be really thoughtful about what you're bringing to the table. It's possible it's unconscious. It's possible you have these motives that you're unaware of that are filtering into your communication and causing you to obscure facts or try to weaponize language or words in order to get the outcome that you desire. But the other potential that exists with this Mercury-Pluto square is an opportunity to really deepen our understanding and to even change our mind, to even get down into the rawness and into the emotion and kind of do some live shadow work through conversation or through journaling or through some type of out loud processing. So engaging the mind in ways that are cathartic can be an antidote to the really intense kind of shadow expression of this transit. And I'd encourage you to do things like that, to like write a letter and burn it, to vocalize, to sing, to like make noises that help you express energy and kind of get it out of you. Maybe it means having a really honest conversation with someone where you're sort of processing out loud. That's an option too. As long as you are staying in integrity, this could be a productive moment that offers you an opportunity for some degree of transformation or change. On Tuesday, May 13th, the moon then enters Sagittarius. And with the moon in Sag, we're shifting from this kind of more punctuating, penetrating scorpionic energy into Sag, which can be a bit more freewheeling, a bit more light. Sag is more inclined toward hope and optimism typically, but it's more like on the heels of coming out of Scorpio. And Sag is like, I don't want to go back there. I just felt this like shadow. We went through the depths. We went through this death process. And now I want to emerge and like re-embrace life and joy and positivity. And sometimes that can show up as bypassing. Sometimes we experience something kind of intense and then we try to switch really fast into like, nope, that didn't happen. No, we're good. And that moon and Sag energy can sometimes show up that way. So be careful of that, but also embrace the opportunity to maybe bring a bit more levity and a bit more hope into the picture, especially if you had a rough full moon or a rough lead up to the full moon. Later that day, Mercury forms an opposition to Black Moon Lilith. And this, again, Black Moon Lilith, as I think I've mentioned on here before, is not like a body in the sky. It's a calculated point called a lunar apogee that represents the farthest out point of the moon's orbit. And so there's a sort of depth and intensity to Lilith. And if you look into Lilith from a mythological standpoint, you can learn a lot more about her story and her symbolism, which is very rich, especially for women and femmes, and a lot to do with bodily autonomy and reclamation of self and identity and power, and especially sexual power and freedom. And so there's a liberatory bent to Lilith. And with Mercury and Taurus forming an opposition to Lilith and Scorpio, we might be talking about those things, especially fresh off the heels of this Mercury square Pluto. There's kind of a similar dynamic here. And so where there was some type of really active power dynamic that's coming up leading up to Monday, then on Tuesday we switch into this Lilith opposition, and it's feeling like we're talking about maybe women's rights, maybe the rights of queer people, maybe we're exploring these topics in more intensity and sort of getting into the thought and getting into the feeling. And that might involve some confrontation. That might involve like pushing back against the patriarchy. That might involve standing up or advocating for something that you care about or someone that you care about. So women's topics feel very highlighted this week, and I think especially the way that abuses of power manifest and impact women and women of color especially, like those topics could be very up this week. And of course, we're seeing a lot of that on the world stage. On Thursday, the moon then enters Capricorn. So we're switching into Saturn-ruled moons for the rest of the week. So on Thursday, we make that switch and we're feeling it all through the rest of the week. Going from Sag, where we had that moment where maybe we were trying to embrace more positivity and a bit more expansiveness, and then we go into Moon and Cap, and maybe we're feeling tired, maybe we're feeling under-resourced, and like things are kind of catching up to us, kind of like the full moon hangover that hits a little bit delayed. And with the Moon and Cap, we often want to feel secure. We want to feel like what we're doing is sustainable. And yet sometimes we push ourselves too hard. This can be a time when we want to take on a lot of tasks and get things done and really move through our responsibilities. But that may feel challenging, especially with this full moon come down. It may feel tiring. It may have drained us. It may have brought up a lot of emotions at the start of the week that we're still kind of trying to wade through and process. Later that day, the sun in Taurus forms a sextile to the North Node in Pisces. And this can be a moment where we have this kind of brief window of opportunity to make a new choice about how we use our energy and maybe how we express ourselves. So it's possible that we're presented with this moment where we get to show up differently, we get to make a different choice, we get to maybe empower ourselves a bit and move toward a sort of growth opportunity. So that could look like making a new choice and doing something that's more life-affirming and maybe redirecting our energy to something that offers growth and hope and potential as opposed to staying stuck in the mud. On Saturday, May 17th, the sun forms a conjunction to Uranus. And this moment is kind of hearkening back to some of the full moon stuff that occurred at the beginning of the week. This conjunction was with an orb during the full moon. So the sun was approaching Uranus during the full moon, or applying to a conjunction is what it's called technically. So when the sun was applying to a conjunction with Uranus, we experienced that full moon punctuation moment, and then the sun keeps moving, the moon gets way ahead and the sun keeps moving day by day, and then eventually finally fully meets Uranus. And with that exact aspect, something may come to light, or you may experience something that's kind of illuminating or even surprising. Uranus can be this change maker and a bit of a revolutionary that really rapidly changes dynamics and circumstances, and sometimes offers us surprises. It can be like those moments of whoa, like shock. And this conjunction is not rare. It happens every year. The sun meets Uranus every single year, but it is a marked moment. It's a moment to pay attention to, because there could be something, especially in our Taurus house or even in our Scorpio house, which was just highlighted, really any of the fixed houses, that's getting activated and seen and visible. And there's a moment and opportunity again to change. And so I keep emphasizing this change opportunity, because it feels like a big theme for this week, that there is a marked opportunity for us to shift, for us to do something differently. And that may kind of be pushed on us. Maybe like strange circumstances arise that kind of nudge us or even push us to make a different choice or to show up in a different way. And that could be revealing. It could be something that really shows us something about ourselves that we didn't know or couldn't have seen before. And they kind of come through as like light bulb moments or aha moments when Uranus is in the picture. So pay attention to what comes up for you around Saturday, May 17th. This may also be a day when you're compelled to take action or to do something a bit more impulsive and dynamic. But also be mindful that Uranus can sometimes cause accidents and, again, like unexpected things. So be cautious with that, especially because just hours later we experience Mercury forming a square to Mars. So Mercury in Taurus forming a square to Mars in Leo. Fixed signs are still emphasized here. So big week for fixed signs, and that's been the case for a couple weeks now. But this square can represent conflict, can represent us being in a state of tension with other people, where egos are flaring, where we're disagreeing, where communication feels more charged and activated, and we're likely to speak, maybe regret things that we say later on, or maybe do something or say something impulsively, especially with Uranus activating the sun. There's a high potential for us to do something impulsive that we later regret, maybe. Or it could be when we like speak our truth or stand up for ourselves or do something that like is more authentic. Mars has fighting spirit, and especially in Leo. So keep that in mind. And the fixed signs can be stubborn. And so when we speak from that place of activation, is that the truth, or is that something within us that's hurting that we're really trying to like shoot out at someone else? Later that day, the moon then enters Aquarius. So instantly, like, we go from Cap moon into Aquarius moon. We're still in Saturn landia with these two moons. And with the moon in Aquarius, sometimes we're trying to analyze or assess or like get the big picture, and it leads to us sort of like removing ourselves from our present reality in a bit of a dissociative way. So it's very possible that we could end up feeling more detached, but in a sort of self-protective way on Saturday, especially with the other transits that are occurring. I would imagine lots of us will be feeling self-protective and a bit more shut down, or at least wanting to kind of keep our distance. So be mindful of how that shows up for you and how that might show up for other people. And take a pause, breathe, try to be in your body. All of those sort of Taurian antidotes would be really good for this moment. Okay, let's get into our tarot reading for this week. All right, welcome to our tarot reading for the week of the 11th through the 17th. So beginning, as always, with our anchor card this week, which represents sort of our overall energy, we have the Prince of Cups reversed. And this, in most decks, would be called the Knight of Cups reversed. This is often considered a Scorpio card, which is interesting. So the Knight of Cups specifically is a figure that is often quite emotionally in tune, and someone that sometimes comes with a love offer, or someone who comes in with some type of emotional expression. Often they're delivering some type of message, or they're on a journey of emotion. When the Prince of Cups or the Knight of Cups shows up in reverse, there might be an element of manipulation involved in that, or it may be someone who's emotionally unavailable, or someone who comes with a sort of agenda, or might even be like too much. Like think of like love bombing, or think of someone who comes in and is like kind of emotionally messy, and they just like bring the thing, they say the thing, they do the thing, and there might not be a whole lot of thought and conscientiousness behind that. So I'm going to shout out to people who are dating or people who are in relationships. This is something to be thoughtful of, that there could be some wishy-washy, kind of like a little shady energy that comes through with this Knight of Cups reversed. This can be like an emotional manipulator, or someone who just like says a lot or promises a lot but doesn't have a whole lot to back it up, and often again is operating from a place of sort of deeper intentions. And that's not necessarily malicious. Sometimes it's just that someone is lacking self-awareness or just isn't emotionally mature, and they sort of come in with that energy and it ends up not feeling super great. So this could be something that you're experiencing from someone else. This could also be your energy, so be mindful of that too. Just really good week to like check in with yourself and to ask yourself how interactions are feeling. And if you feel good about the energy you're bringing, if you feel good about the energy someone else is bringing, then awesome. But just like do some grounding, use your discernment, and proceed cautiously. Our challenge this week is the Two of Swords. So, paired with our gift, which I will get to in a moment, this is a big week for decisions. And the Two of Swords, we're often in a place where we don't have access to our usual faculties. We maybe don't have all the information we desire, and yet we need to make a choice. We're at some type of crossroads. Often the Two of Swords has a figure who's blindfolded, and this figure is like standing on some type of moon. Maybe this is a Libra moon card. And their swords are crossed up in the air, and they're sort of looking up, and we can tell that they're not, they can't see. And so things are limited, information is limited, access is limited, and yet they've got to proceed somehow. And the Two of Swords is a card that encourages us to practice self-trust and to really listen to the voice of intuition. So if you're someone who struggles to access or hear your intuition, this might be a really good week to slow down and like spend some time with your body and notice what comes up when you entertain different options. Like, do you feel light? Do you feel grounded and light when you think about one path? Do you feel kind of closed off and tense and like restricted when you think about another? That's often a really good indicator. And it may not be those specific indicators, but you will have a personal map. You will have a personal language that offers you intuitive insight. So if you're like out in the world and you pay attention and just notice how your body feels when you're exploring different options, even if it's as simple as like, do I want to turn left or do I want to turn right? Do I want to go to this coffee shop or this coffee shop? Practicing listening to the voice of intuition in really small, like low stakes situations like that can be a super effective way to more deeply tune into and understand how your intuition speaks to you with time. So take those opportunities this week. And if you're facing a bigger choice, a bigger crossroads moment, maybe you can apply that understanding to this moment, or maybe you need to take a rest and like give yourself the time and space that you need to make that choice. Our gift this week, and why I mentioned big week for choices, we have the Lovers reversed. So the Lovers is connected to Gemini, and yes, it can be a card that's about relationships. Yes, it can be a card that's about lovers, literally. But sometimes and often it's actually about, again, crossroads moments where we need to make a decision. And we're weighing two possibilities or even more possibilities. And sometimes we feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we don't have total access to the voice of our heart. And so it's hard to decide. It's hard to take a step forward and feel like we're authentically moving if we just don't know, if we feel inundated with options or overwhelmed by the potential consequences of one path versus another. The Lovers does encourage us to go back to the heart And sometimes to playfully detach from the seriousness of it all, to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room so that we can really connect to our joy and connect to our heart again. Because it's showing up in reverse, and this is a gift, something interesting that's coming through, take it or leave it, this won't apply to all of you, is that some of us might have a choice taken away from us. We might have a choice made for us, and that could end up being a blessing. If our options reduce, if a door is closed, if something no longer becomes available, that could actually end up being a blessing in disguise. Think like rejection is divine protection. On the other hand, for some of us, we're actually coming out of a place of indecision and like confusion, and where we're like waffling and ambivalent, and maybe we've been there. We've been in this like ambivalent, like I don't know what to do place. And this could be the week when we come out of that mode and actually decide that we're ready to make a choice. We decide that we're ready to move forward and at least try. Even if it's not the perfect choice, it's a choice. It's a step forward. And so potentially shifting your perspective when it comes to whatever choice is in front of you this week would be a great move. And if you need more time and you can get more time, then take a little bit more time. But don't delay forever for fear of making the wrong choice. If you not making a choice is in itself a choice, not making progress or not taking steps forward or not communicating, like that is a choice too. And if you're keeping someone else on hold, like if this is about a love relationship and you're kind of putting someone on the back burner or keeping them like in a place of confusion because of your indecision, understand that that has ramifications. And treating people with respect and decency and integrity has been a really loud theme recently, and very much alive with this lunar cycle, this lunation, is coming back to integrity and maybe coming out of a place of being avoidant or being shut down or being fearful, and actually facing that fear, taking a step forward and making a choice, even if it's a choice that feels imperfect or disappointing in some way. So check in with your heart this week. Find ways to do that consistently. Check in with the heart, breathe through it, listen to your body, and do your best. Okay? I hope you all have a good week. And if you got something from this, please do like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, you can leave me a rating on whatever platform you're on, and that is super helpful. It helps me get found by more people who might benefit from this. Thank you for listening, and take care.